All right, I think we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Live with Sondra. This is the Live with Sondra show, and I'm your host, Sondra Shannon. It's 2026, and we're starting off the year strong with operations. So, before we dive in, let's roll the intro. All right, we're back. I'm sorry we were having a technical difficulty there. I think the intro wanted you to watch it twice, but you only get to watch it once. You get me now. And I'm really excited about today's show. But before we dive in, I need to just give a quick thank you to our show sponsor, Gatemaster Technology. Gatemaster works with attractions to unify ticketing, point of sale, access control, and guest commerce into systems that support your managers instead of overwhelming them. And as you will hear today, confident managers don't happen without clear, connected systems behind them. Now, today we're tackling something that comes up constantly in my conversations with operators and executives, and that is operational guests, manager confidence, and the real cost of underdeveloping middle management. So, undeveloped middle management. Our session today is called Solve Operational Gaps, Develop Confident Managers, and I could not have picked a better guest for today's show. I'm joined today by Taryn Bolduc, co-owner and chief strategy officer at High Roads Management Training. Taryn brings more than 25 years of leadership experience in the amusement and attractions industry, including executive roles as resort director at Coco Key and general manager at Splashdown Beach. She's an expert in developing confident managers, building operational systems that actually work, and navigating cross generational communication, one of the biggest friction points we see in parks today. And I know that to be true because this was a conversation that I had with the CEO of Florida Attractions recently. Now, it's also worth noting that Taryn runs on coffee and her kids. She admits that nothing's been consistent since she's had them, which makes her extremely qualified to talk about today's topic. So, without further ado, please help me welcome Taryn to the show. Hi, Taryn.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. How was that intro? Okay, did I miss anything?
Oh, amazing, amazing. You make me sound great. Thanks.
Well, hey, you're in good company because I am highly caffeinated right now, which always makes this show fun.
Ready to go.
Yeah, right. I did switch to tea because I've already had like 3 cups today. But I love that because really what I'm trying to bring to this show is, a coffee conversation between two people, and I'm really excited to have you here today for that reason. Because one, I know that within my family and business, my sister Tiffany is a big fan of yours, and um, you guys must have had an amazing conversation at WWA because you're somebody that has really stuck with her, and we're really excited. I'm really excited to have you on the show and get to know you a little bit better. One of
Well,
the things, if you're okay with me just jumping in,
yeah,
first of all, we talked a little bit about kids,
we
and
did.
I love meeting other women who have children and that are having to do this work alongside being a mother. So I just want to give big kudos to you because I think the world needs a lot more of us, and I also think that um, If I look back on my own kids, I think our kids deserve moms who kill it, right? Get the
Oh, I
job
love that. I
do
love
it.
that. Get the job done, right? It's
Yeah,
like kids are relatable in the workplace, right? It's all the same thing.
100%.
Managing home, managing a workplace, all similar. Just gives us that strength.
It does. And I think that I always used to say like my kids deserve to see me succeed. And so I'm really excited to talk to you today because I think not only what you're doing for businesses and attractions is helping them figure out how to succeed. And I'm hoping you're okay with us just jumping right into this conversation.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. I appreciate it. I think we were talking earlier about having mentors and mentors that support the work-life balance and motherhood. And it does. It just makes them think that they can do it all watching us do it. So
Yes.
as I fumble through it, I'm hoping they learn a little bit too.
Hey, you know what? I've been accused of creating I'm trying to remember, was it unreasonable standards for women when I was young?
Gives us something to attain to.
I'm like, I'm not actually trying to create any standards for anybody else. I'm just trying to do me. And I think that resonates with you. But that kind of brings me to like your passion and what you're deeply passionate about, which is building that middle manager to GM bench.
Yes.
And so from your perspective, because this is something that even I at Gatemaster, I do feel an impact on how this can impact even the success of what we're doing, but the whole overall operation. So from your perspective, what is the single most critical skill that separates effective middle managers from struggling from, I'm trying to think of how to ask this, but struggling in today's attraction environment? Does that make sense? Like,
it does.
What do you think it would prevent that from happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the biggest separator isn't really a technical skill at all. It's the ability to emotionally regulate and make decisions with confidence, right? And solid training and clear systems are what's going to make that possible. When managers know the expectation and they have clear frameworks, they stop second guessing themselves and they make decisions without that spiral. The managers they're like a pressure valve in our operations. If they stay calm, everything downstream runs so much better. And I've always been a believer in this. And we talked about me having kids, and honestly, becoming a mom, it's just made that crystal clear for me. If I'm regulated, my kids are regulated. And if I'm not, things get crazy quickly. And it's very much mirroring that in the workplace. I've seen really smart supervisors struggle simply because they felt urgent. Things were so urgent for them and they took everything so personal. And I find that those who thrive, they learn how to pause, they make decisions, they move forward without carrying that emotional weight of the entire park on their shoulders. And that ability to stay steady, it's what really makes everything work.
So basically we want to see them kind of in the flow, not to bring up a water park reference here, but you just got to flow like a river, right?
And the more education they have, the more knowledge they have, the more easy it is for them to regulate and the easier that it is to make those decisions with confidence.
Of course. No, I love what you said about training, because I do believe that training is an ongoing thing no matter where you are in the workplace, right? No matter where you are, you should always be striving to be the next version of yourself. And so it takes people like you who have been there to show others the way. And that makes me think about what is one operational system, maybe you mentioned systems, that you consistently see improve things most dramatically within these operations?
Yeah, setting clear expectations and having simple accountability systems in place to support that. The biggest operational shift that I see is really those that have structured, simple accountability systems. Most managers think they've communicated what they want, but they really haven't defined what good looks like or how it's going to be checked. And training helps them slow that down and put something practical in place. For example, right, instead of saying be on time and run a clean shift, we really like to help managers define that, right? Whether it's clock in 5 minutes early, checklists that have to be completed on the top of the hour, or giving them 2 guest touch points per rotation should happen. things that are quick and consistent to be able to follow up on, right? And then having consistent ability to follow up. So maybe shift huddles, check-ins, or maybe even setting up one-on-ones with your team, depending on the size of your team. And knowing that good accountability isn't about micromanaging or catching people doing something wrong, but it's about creating consistency through follow-up, and that creates that trust. And when those expectations are set and those systems are in place to hold people accountable, the follow-through is predictable. People relax, they perform better. And we see that in the trainings that we do with immediately smoother shift transitions, fewer callouts, cleaner documentation. There's just way less friction. Managers stop chasing people and they start leading using those systems. When it's not really a flashy answer, but it's a powerful and effective system holding people accountable and making things clear. Your whole operation starts to run easier.
Well, and who is it that says, I think it's Brene Brown. Are you familiar with her?
I like her a lot.
I do too. And one of the things that she said, I think it was in her Dare to Lead, it was that clear is kind.
Yes.
And that's something that I really see happening more and more in our industry is, I mean, if I can be completely real, like you, I've been in this industry for 25 years, and we're seeing a shift of kindness being represented a little bit more in management, in cultures, so much, in these business cultures, so much more. And to your point about holding people accountable, you also have to make sure they understand what that means and that that's clear for them. So I really appreciate that.
It makes things so much easier when clarity is there. And I think the biggest challenge we see is that people think they're being clear, but we really help them kind of work through what clarity is and how to get that message across.
Maybe even how to show them what it looks like, right?
Yeah, it's like that old peanut butter and jelly, you blindfold them and you tell them what to do and they're like smacking the can when they open it, or how do you actually do it? It always goes back to that like old school thought of just clear systems work the best.
I love that. Well, you've worked across operations, HR, and food and beverage. And when middle managers aren't properly trained, how does that gap show up immediately, like both in the park and guest experience, but also in park profitability?
When they're not trained, you like you said, you feel it immediately, and the guests feel it immediately. Things they start getting inconsistent. One shift can run great, the next one doesn't. Lines move so much slower. Service feels uneven, and when something goes wrong, just guest recovery takes so much longer. Guests don't always know why it feels off, but they just know something's off. It's all behind the scenes. Then that inconsistency starts to get expensive. Overtime starts creeping in. Schedules aren't being managed confidently. You're giving out more comp tickets because issues aren't handled well in the moment. Food waste and supplies is off because of improper inventory and management controls. And you just see supervisors and managers burning themselves out trying to hold it all together. And it feels like they're doing it with duct tape and good intentions. Even when you have the strongest GMs and you can have an amazing frontline staff, but if you're not working with them in that middle management layer who directly works with that frontline staff isn't supported, that whole operation becomes unpredictable. And that unpredictability is where that money leaks and people start to quit. Consistency really is profitability in disguise, and middle managers are the ones that are going to create that calm and steady rhythm. It's never just one person. It's that middle level that really affects it all.
Well, it's funny. I love what you said about like good accountability isn't micromanaging. And my husband has this saying that he uses when he's on stages, and I really love it because he always says, nobody, speaking of kids, you can never ask a kid, you'll never ask if you ask a kid, you will never hear them say when they're asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? They will never say managed, right? And that is where I think so many middle managers struggle. I mean, I'm sure you've been there, I've been there, and they are not always able to show what success looks like, which is why these tools are important that you're talking about, and teaching them, giving them that clarity as to what it is. And so, I wonder if, how do you advise managers to communicate operational changes I'm moving on to cross-generational
Yeah.
communication. I hope that's okay. I
Yeah.
really think this is an important topic. I was talking to Bill from Florida Attractions actually just a couple of years ago. We were chit-chatting on this topic because I do see that more and more this is becoming an issue for attractions. And I don't really know why. I'm curious what your thoughts are, if it is because of that middle manager seats and how we've trained them, or if it's because things have just rapidly changed with this next generation.
Yeah, I mean, we hear this so much, and we've been asked to talk on this so much, and it's like you're not managing, positions anymore. You're managing a whole timeline, right? You've got boomers, you've got Gen X all the way through Gen Z, and they each learn something new, and you hear the same thing over and over and over, right? This generation, but it's not really like every generation felt the same way. But I usually tell managers, don't change the messaging, just change how you deliver it. And you need to still have that one clear expectation, which we've talked about a lot today. But you can't rely on one method anymore and hope it sticks. And you're not just managing generational differences. You kind of have to look at it along the lines of you're managing different learning styles.
Yeah.
Some people catch it in a huddle. Some need it written down. Some don't rely on processes until they kind of get a text or they hear it or they see it. And that might look like adding 2-minute huddles at the start of each shift or simple checklist in the break room so people can see it. And really for the younger generations, we're finding that like staff messaging through your scheduling apps or your team social groups, they work great. Where older generations, they respond better to face-to-face conversations and written notes. And then everybody needs that reminder, whether it's the same day or the next day, time frame permitting. But I always remind managers kind of the same thing that we were talking about earlier. Repetition isn't micromanaging, but it's respectful. It's not about changing your messaging. It's about rounding it out so everybody understands it. And you're not nagging. Most people, they get scared, right? I'm nagging. You're not. You're setting people up to succeed. Most people need to hear things, and it's a fact of you have to hear something 7 times before you retain it. In 7 different ways. Again, it goes back to like my kids. My husband and I were talking about this, and he's like, they're tuning you out when you say the same thing 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It's the same thing with our employees. But if you say it differently, the messaging is the same, but the way that they retain it is different. And you're going to get one that sticks.
Well, I think it's important what you mentioned, like you have to hear it 7 times. Because in the marketing world, we're like, hey, it used to be 7 touches. Now it's like 30, something crazy, right? Like you got to touch people 30 times before they decide they want to work with you or even recognize what you're offering or who you are in terms of getting known. But I also think it's really interesting because, a person today, and I've said this before on the show, because of this, receives as much information in one day as somebody in the 15th century would have received in their entire lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
And the human brain is the same. So if you think about all that input, I mean, that's what you're competing with when you're teaching your team and communicating to your team, right?
Oh, yeah. You're Snapchatting to email to, it's like all these different channels too. So one's on one, one's on another. It comes across differently. You got to have an encyclopedia of social media and AI now. Little members to help you do it all.
Believe me, I know I'm all over the socials, but I will say this: I do think I like what you've said about meeting people where they're at too, right? Which is why we do it. I mean, you own a business. I'm sure you understand this. You do have to be everywhere because some people are on Facebook, some people are on LinkedIn. I mean, luckily, a lot of our people are on LinkedIn. I'm very happy about that, right? But I had a friend recently say something that I thought was really interesting. She said, she was talking about like going to your Christmas party. Everybody just went to Christmas parties. You're my first show in January too. Thank you for helping start this year. But this friend of mine was talking about, when you meet somebody new that you want to stay connected with, make sure to ask them like, where do you hang out online? And I thought, with regards to this conversation, it's kind of interesting when you think about your staff. Asking your team, where are you online? Because or where do you hang out? Are you a text message person? Are you on WhatsApp? What does that look like for you? Like,
Oh,
Where's
yeah.
the place?
We do a training, and one of the first parts of our training, it's our accelerator program, talks about different ways of finding staff, hiring staff, retaining staff, and building staff. It's all about your hiring process. And we talk about a pre-screen form. And one of the questions that we've added on our pre-screen form is just that. It's
I love
where do
that.
you communicate and connect so that when you're going to build out this messaging, where are you going to hit the most of your staff? And that's
Yeah.
something you haven't had to do before, right? Everything was either through email or through your scheduling app. And even that was high tech a couple of years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting. This conversation is very interesting because so much of this communication is changing so fast with AI and everything else. But just kind of as a follow-up to this part of our conversation,
Mhm.
when someone steps up from a front line, from the front line to middle management, what do you see being maybe the most common communication blind spots that they have? And
Yeah.
what could they do in terms of developing their own communication skills to possibly improve that?
Oh, I think the biggest blind spot I've seen so far is staying in that like top performer mode instead of shifting into leadership mode, right? That thought of if I just work harder, this is going to work because that's how they earn their promotion. That's how they got there in the first place, right? They picked up extra shifts. We saw them as a great worker. They jump in, they fix everything themselves, they cover shifts, they answer questions, and they're carrying so much weight. And what they don't realize yet is that leadership at this level isn't about being the hero anymore. It's about coaching, planning, setting other people up to succeed without you. And that's scary, right? Because
Yeah.
hearing you should train somebody to take your job so that you can take a day off or move up, that wasn't taught before, right? Everyone held everything close and was afraid that someone was going to take over or they'd lose their job. And now it's about you can't work 70 hours a week. People want work-life balance. So when managers make a shift and start explaining why and setting clear expectations and letting others own pieces of the operation, communication actually gets better almost immediately. And they stop doing everything and they start developing people, and it helps with burnout, which we're hearing a ton about, especially with AI and technology and the phones and the easy of access. So yeah, I think that would be my biggest thought.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious on burnout. I heard a speaker one time, actually the Florida Attractors. I keep mentioning them
Yeah.
because they're an organization I really love. So if you're listening, go visit them. They're doing some good work over there and teaching people how to run attractions and connecting attractions. But I had a speaker a couple years back that spoke on burnout. And one of the most interesting things that I heard in from him on that stage was that, so much of burnout is a function of like excitement. Are we excited about what's to come? And I wonder, and I'm kind of going off script here a little bit with regards to this, but I'm curious, are there ways with this cross generation and then also, training middle management, are there ways that we can help create excitement for these teams? Even if that excitement is like the mission, where are we going?
Yeah, I think it goes back to why, right? Everybody wants the why now. Everybody wants to be involved. Everybody wants to feel purpose, especially this generation, right? I mean, if you give them purpose, they're right there with you. They want to be part of it. If you don't, they're going to ghost you, right? I mean, we're just in a generation where they're just not going to show up. I mean, forget giving you 2 weeks notice. They want to feel part of it. They don't want to feel like they're told this is what to do. I mean, we talk a lot about systems and processes, and that's great in the training, and we stand behind that. But it's systems and processes that gives people some autonomy also. So yeah, having autonomy and also the concept of 80-hour work weeks that we did, and that was like a badge of honor, that's no longer there for them, right? They want work-life balance to be excited. They want the volleyball night that they can get to know the people they're working with. They want things, and it doesn't have to be pizza parties, and that stuff's out. But I think getting them involved in that and meeting them at their level and communicating with them using tools that they want to reference, right? It's less of you have to do this and more of we want you to be part of the process, gives them ownership in the business. And that's what makes them better employees, from managers, front lines to GMs, right? It doesn't matter. We all want to feel like we're valued and we're part of it. And I think that drives that excitement. It's never about the money. Everyone thinks, $15, $18, $20, whatever our minimum wages are bumping up to. I don't think it's about that as much as it is wanting to bond with your coworkers, wanting to be part of something and have some autonomy.
Yeah, I love that. I also think, like, I love that you said it's not always about the money, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it is about, like, the environment. I would say a lot of times it's about the
Yeah.
environment. You
Oh,
know,
definitely.
I remember being 18, 19 years old and working with bosses who didn't make me feel safe, right?
Oh, yeah.
I feel silly saying that, right? Like, but that's a real reality for people today. They wanna when I say safe, like safe to
Yeah.
say things, safe to tell them if I was needing information or training or whatever that is. And I
Yeah.
feel like we're headed into a time and place where we can now communicate those things a little bit better, and also we can ask for those things. Like, we're creating space for asking for that, which is super important because we assume that so many of our team members come equipped with all of the training and tools that they need to be successful at whatever they're supposed to be successful at. But the truth is most of us don't.
No, I think it's funny. I remember I had an employee come out and we told him to rake something simple, right? Like we raked our sand. So we always had lines in the sand. And he took the rake and he had it backwards and he was dragging it. And it's like they're not taught how to do things anymore at home. Things that we expect them to learn in school and things that we expect them to learn at the home, they come to us and our frontline staff is they're blank canvases and you have to look at them as blank canvases. And we have to teach our managers how to effectively have patience and be coaches and teachers now. And I think we have to start looking at it from the coaching and the educational side of it rather than this is common sense. I don't think common sense is common sense anymore. And then again, with the access of cell phones, everything's instant gratification, right? If I don't like it, I'm going to Google it. I'm going to look it up. So things are so instant. So creating safe spaces and creating places where people want to be and want to work and feel safe is huge.
Yeah,
We've all worked in those places that I'm not going to raise my hand or work. And now it's easier to leave. Before you didn't know you had that option.
right. Well, before, at least for me, it wasn't an option because I'm,
Yeah.
young person trying to survive, right? So I love this idea of coaching people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about your team that you're working with, I mean, there really is not a big difference between what's happening on a sports team and what's happening in our businesses, and how those teams need to be working together to achieve whatever greatness we're going towards. And meeting them where they're at is super important. And even having the right tools and technology. So innovating and having the right technology. And I know High Roads does a great job in helping managers adapt to modern systems. So I have a kind of a question about that with regards to how can managers train non-technical managers? Now, I have to say this, at Game Master, this is something we see all the time. I love what you're doing. Thank you for jumping in here because you're going to make even my job easier with this. Um, and it just takes a lot of friction out for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that tool fatigue is a real issue for people. So many of
Oh, yeah.
so many of us are dealing with so many different types of tools, or required to learn them. I'm the worst at that, but I'm trying to adapt like everybody else. But how can attractions train non-technical managers to identify and leverage innovation within their organizations? And that could be AI, queue management,
Mm-hmm.
predictive maintenance, integrated e-commerce platforms without overwhelming them. Because that is a real, like I said, tool fatigue is real. That's a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much out there. I mean, and there's so much out there that's changing day by day. So we take it from a little bit of a different perspective, right? Where we're not trying to turn them into the tech experts because it's not really realistic for us to do from the management side of it. But we do have a tool that is coming out that's going to provide some more support on that over the next year. But we try to focus on teaching them to be curious problem solvers, how to ask better questions like where are we losing time? Where are the guests getting frustrated? What keeps breaking? What decisions are we guessing on instead of knowing? And once they understand their operation at that level, technology stops being scary. AI predictive maintenance, Q tools, whatever it may be. It all becomes a way to support the decisions, and not something they feel kind of behind on. It starts with really knowing your operation, not necessarily knowing the software, because if you understand your operation, you know what to search for the software, and you know what to go out and ask somebody like you and say, here's an expert in it, right? I'm coming to you as my expert, but I know my business. How do we work this out? Rather than not really knowing what to look for. I think that's the hardest thing is there's so much out there. How do you cut through that noise? And it starts by knowing your business and knowing the questions and knowing the gaps that you, or the friction points. And then you can ask AI, right? You can ask ChatGPT, you can ask Google, here's my pain point. What are my options? And start there. So it really starts with knowing your operation more than the software, and the software can come and support that after, because there's so many things out there with various features.
Yeah, and I do agree that, like, we have our greatest success in organizations when the confidence of the team and the managers, when they're confident in using it. That's the biggest thing, and it doesn't matter what kind of tool it is. Your team needs to be confident. I actually read something not that long ago that said that, like, the number one reason people quit their jobs, you know, like, what that is?
But
Not being confident in the work that they're required to do. They don't know if they can get it done. They don't know how to get it done. And that really stuck with me, because I realized that, you know, that's really what you're dealing with your teams. Are they
that's
confident?
why we started what we're doing.
I love
That's why
that.
we started High Road, right? All we heard was middle management was lacking, and there's no support and there's no training that really focuses on the middle level, right? CEOs can all go to a conference and get all this great education at these conferences, and frontline staff we all focus on because frontline touches the guests, but really it's the middle managers who can make or break your operation, because the frontline is going to leave if your manager is terrible, and one person at the top really can't deliver it all themselves. So yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference there.
Well, and you said earlier, like, it's hard for people to think about that idea of replacing themselves. But the truth is, they're elevating themselves.
Yes.
That's really what happens when people are confident, when they know how to do their job enough that they can train another person, and that's what moves businesses forward.
Yeah, it's you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you have to be able to, if you know your job so well that you can train somebody else, you're the expert in it, right? And then that lets you move on, that lets you move up, or it lets you take a day off. I mean, I say it all the time. We're burning
Yes.
people out because they don't feel like they can leave their operation because their staff isn't trained properly, and that says a lot, right? If you don't feel like, or you as an owner or a CEO, you should want your people on their game at all times, and part of that is some self-care. You know, I'm not saying take weeks off at a time during the middle of the summer in your busy operation, but the ability that you can walk away and not get 50 emails or feel like you're getting called for fires. That's the goal of good systems and good training. You can have the best staff in the world, but if they don't have that and they don't have knowledge, we're leaving them with nothing.
Yeah, I've learned over the years, being in business, and I know you're helping businesses with this, but, you know, it's not a badge to be the key man, especially when, you know, when life happens, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, there's something that I think about all the time. Like, I don't want to be in a position where I can't, heaven forbid, somebody in my family passes away, right?
Yeah.
And I can't go deal with that part of my life because I'm stuck here dealing with the business, and I'm the only one who knows how to do this. That's not
Yeah.
that's not where anyone wants to be. That's not the
Yeah.
balance that we talk about, or even the work-life integration that we talk about. And, you know, the systems that when we talk about innovation and technology, the systems that we have kind of mimic the systems that we need to create in our businesses. But, you know, it kind of just went back to innovation a little bit. You know, we've got our RFID technology,
Mhm.
AI technology, this introduction of personalized upselling, just to name a few things, are foundational systems. Or, you know, I guess what I'm asking is, what are some of the foundational systems or mindsets that these successful managers already have in place to succeed? And or maybe what are those things that they need to succeed if they don't have that?
I think it just goes back to piggyback on what we were talking about. I mean, process clarity. It all has to come before your platforms. Um, your operating systems and rhythms aren't clear. Technology doesn't fix the problem, it automates the confusion. So you need to know who does what, when decisions are made, how information flows before you add the tools. And what I see a lot of teams is buying systems and hoping it's going to solve the issue, but without clarity, they often choose the wrong systems. And that's where your time and money gets burned and the tool wasn't the right one to begin with. So RFIDs, upselling tech, scheduling systems, they're going to work beautifully when your processes make sense and you know what you're looking for to be able to do that. And if it doesn't, it just shines a spotlight on the gaps faster. So we focus on the systems, the structure, the needs, filling those gaps and what your pain points are. And then we backfill with teaching you how the tools are, or you know what to start looking for when you're going to search for these tools.
Well, so you've been in this industry a long time, and I'm sure you've seen over time a lot of mistakes. And I'm kind of the belief that, like, when treated well, mistakes are the mother of creation. Like, we can iterate on those and make things better, and sometimes, like, failures are wins in business because we learn, especially if we learn.
Mhm.
But, I'm curious if you're seeing, one, a lot of the same operational mistakes that we saw 10, 20 years ago, or are we still seeing the same operational mistakes happening today that we saw back then?
Oh, I think we're still promoting great employees into leadership roles and hoping it works. It hasn't changed in 20 years. It's still costing amazing people. The difference now is just how fast everything moves. The pace is quicker, expectations are higher. We talked about burnout; it happens so much faster. So training's not optional anymore. It's protective. If we invest in managers early and intentionally, we're not just going to improve. We're going to retain people and stabilize their operations. We have to stop making employees managers because they're great employees, and we have to start looking. I talked about this at WWA a little bit. You have to almost sample them, right? Say, hey, can you handle this tube inventory, and see how they process it? It's almost like an audition without an audition, right? It gives them that autonomy that we talked about earlier, and see how they handle it, right? Because the best people and the leaders are not necessarily the best managers for your operation. So just because they show up to work every day and they're wearing their uniform doesn't make them the person that people are going to listen to, or the person who knows how to write a schedule. So
Right. Well, you mentioned, like, when we were talking about communication, I thought of something just now that was interesting. Have you ever done the DISC assessment?
no.
So it's one, like, people love it or hate it. So when I say this, I know there are going to be people in the audience who probably roll their eyes, but I particularly liked it for a couple of reasons. One, because of that cross generational communication.
Hmm.
Like, to me, I love working with younger people because new ideas, they're excited, their future's bright. It's just and every water park and attraction has those team members, and it's amazing, and it's a great experience, and it's really fun to be somebody who is a part of somebody's growth in that way.
Hmm.
What was interesting to me about the DISC assessment, which one of my mentors recommended for us, and so the entire team took this test. And it was really interesting to see where people fell on the DISC because of their communication styles. And in some ways, it kind of unified us, no matter who was in what generation. But what it did for me was it made me realize, like, this is what's going to upset this type of person. This is what's going to elevate this type of person, or help them succeed more. And even when dealing with, we're we're a family business to some degree. We have a lot of members of my family in there. Even helped with that, right? Like, communication within the family. And my husband's like a high driver, and those are like you don't want a lot of those in a business. Those are the people that we're talking about right now. They're like, get it done and do it anyways, right? I'm a high influencer, which I'm not surprised. The
It's like those Enneagram tests, right? Like, what are
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Okay.
But what was really cool is I found that it actually, like, at the end of the day, it gave the team a lot, uh, it gave our team a lot more permission to step on somebody else's map in their communication at work. And even like humanize our differences. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, I love that.
so,
Yeah.
so here we got my husband who's the high driver that's, not, the high drivers are the bosses you don't want to deal with, right? Like every day. And so, but it humanized him too, because we were able to say to the team, like, hey, like that's his style, right?
Right.
As long as, and he's an amazing coach. Actually, he was just named Grant
Yeah.
Cardone's #1 coach for the second year in a row. So 700 in the world. So I mean, he's amazing when I say this, but he's definitely somebody that gets stuff done.
But you also know how to address those people too, if you know that that's
Yeah.
what it is, right? You don't take it personally.
Yes.
I love those type of tests.
I love them too. And I think that more and more we need to be, I just think more than ever, those types of things that help us learn to communicate with each other is super important in business. And, and I'm sure that is a part of the systems that you guys are helping businesses achieve.
Well, it also helps you. Oh, sorry.
No,
it also
please.
helps you round out your team, right? If you don't want 3 of those on your team, but it lets you round it out. Where sometimes you need that person who pushes your team forward, and sometimes you need people of other perspectives and other learning styles that kind of make you guys push each other to a better place.
Yeah, well, on the disc assessment that we took, it had the drivers. Luckily, we only had one of those on the team. I think we've had 2 or 3 at most because they're very small percentage of the population. You have influencers. There's a few of us, on the team, and then you've got the analyzers. Well, I deal with a lot of developers. They're definitely in the analyzer category. You got to be able to give them the data or they're not going to listen at all, right?
Yep.
And then you've got the stabilizers, which is, I guess, like 60% of the population. But what you realize from those stabilizers and what I learned, and just kind of made me a better person in terms of leadership, is that if 60% of people aren't going to tell me what's up because they don't want to upset me or anyone for that matter, I'm going to have to adjust myself to be able to get that information out of them and recognize that that's probably not the person to get that from. I'm going to go to the driver, I guess, to get that. But Taryn, I really, this has been a really great conversation. It's incredible to start the new year like this with somebody who is really focused on helping to improve the operations within our industry, an industry we both love so very much. And so I really appreciate you for sharing your insights and your experiences today and for being here with me and being my first guest on the show. I wish there was like some badge I could give you, like first guest of 2026. Well, you get it. You get the badge. But for everybody watching today, how can they get a hold of you if this is something that that they could use your help on, and maybe they want to learn from you, get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
So email is great. I'm Taryn B at highroadmanagementtraining.com. And then I will also provide all of my socials, my contact information for you when the show goes live, and when it gets posted after. But you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's my name, Taryn Eisenman-Bolduc, on both. So I look forward to talking to anybody who has more questions.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Well, so again, just to recap for everybody watching today, it's important to develop your confident managers. And it's not just about training. It's about pairing leadership development with the right systems so managers can actually succeed in the roles that they're in and can be coaches for the rest of the team. So if you, before we wrap up today, I just want to say again, thank you to our sponsor, Gatemaster Technology. And if you want to learn more about how integrated guest e-commerce systems support your leadership team, you can contact Gatemaster, and it's gatemaster.com. And today's conversation really resonated with me with regards to this because of the work that we do at Gatemaster in this industry, but also having people like Taryn helping you understand and have clarity on what you need to do. So just really want to thank Taryn for being here today. I want to thank everybody who joined us today for the comments, the questions in the chat. And if you're watching this live or on replay, if you're watching this on replay, hashtag replay so Taryn and I know you were here. And if you are listening to this on any of the podcast networks, thank you so much for listening. And thank you for supporting this programming. And we're on our way to 100 guests this year. That's my goal for the year. And I think we just had like our 81st submission. So it's going to be happening really fast. But if you would like to be a guest on this show, you can visit livewithsondra.com and you can share your information, your insights, your expertise with this audience and people who need to find you in order to be able to do what they do best. Thank you to everybody who showed up today. And this is the Live with Sondra show. Until next time, go out there and be great.